welcome back to Block TV. Time for cryptonomics and what appears to be trade war weekend. The US-China trade war flared up yet again this Friday, with Beijing unveiling a new round of retaliatory tariffs on about $75 billion worth of US goods. China Finance Ministry announced it will place additional tariffs of 5% or 10% on US imports starting on September 1st. That kind of correlates with what the US president wants to do to China as well. All this on the heels of weeks of back and forth spats and tweets and threats between the United States and the People's Republic, which many economy experts, are warning can be a full instigator of another recession. Now, on his way to Europe midweek, President Donald Trump raised eyebrows when asked about his agenda vis-a-vis the spiraling trade war between him and China. This is what he had to say.
This isn't my trade war. This is a trade war that should have taken place a long time ago by a lot of other presidents. Over the last 5 or 6 years, China's made $500 billion. $500 billion. Ripped it out of the United States. And not only that, if you take a look, intellectual property theft, add that to it, and add a lot of other things to it. So somebody had to do it. I am the chosen one. Somebody had to do it. So I'm taking on China. I'm taking on China on trade. And you know what? We're winning.
I'm joined in studio by Asher Westrop Evans, Block TV's senior correspondent. I'm not going to touch on that bizarre statement of being the chosen one. Much to say about that, but let's deal with the financial facts, because as we are sitting here, the G7 meeting is underway.
Yes, exactly. So we've got the leaders of the G7 nations meeting in a beautiful resort town of Biarritz in southern France. I'm sure having a great time there. But in the meantime, at a breakfast just this morning, we're recording on Sunday morning European time, Sunday morning breakfast, Boris Johnson and Donald Trump sat down at a meeting together, and Trump had some interesting comments to the media, and I'll read here in this breaking news that just came through. He stated that he is having second thoughts, this is Donald Trump, on his trade war with China and the approach he's taken so far, referring to the statement he'd made earlier in a tweet saying that he could enact the Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 to pull countries out of China by force. He now said, well, I have the right to if I want. I could declare a national emergency. But, he added, actually, we're getting along very well with China right now. We're talking, and I think they want to make a deal much more than I do. Now, this is interesting, Yael, just pointedly, because in the tweets he made on Friday, the ones that caused some serious harm to the market, he included this little gem, which we can see on screen, where he says, my only question, who is our bigger enemy, Jay Powell or Chairman Xi?
The remarkable thing about all of this is, that, by the way, apropos China, there was a famous film called Chinatown with a scene there where, the scene that people, will remember, my sister, my daughter. What does it mean? I want you to trail us back, because as you said, clearly right now we're recording Sunday, it's the 25th of August, it's the end of the summer, on the heels of these very inflammatory tweets that had an effect on the market on the closing day of last week, right?
Exactly.
What
so
effect?
On Friday last week, there was a massive impact on the markets. Markets opened strong, are up. The Dow up 200 points in early morning trading, and then they were hit with a cannonball, as we can see the sharp decline there, that perfectly correlates with an extensive Twitter thread launched by President Trump. I won't read the whole thing, but if we take a look at it here, we can see where he says, for many years, China and many other countries have been taking advantage of our United States on trade, intellectual property theft, and much more. Our country's been losing hundreds of billions of dollars a year to China with no end in sight. It goes on from there, but pretty much stating that this will be a very intense period for the United States and China, serious action being taken, and that it's really frightened the markets. It drove them down over 800 points from where they were sitting at the time, down in the end 623 points on the day. A very intense day.
A very intense day. That on the heels, approximately, I think it was last week or 10 days ago, with the inverted curve of
the yield curve.
The yield curve. Thank you. Which many economists were saying this is a very bad sign. This is leading us towards a recession. One of the reasons this is happening. All that said, and again, as you mentioned, trade war. We don't know what the next 24 hours will bring, be it what happens in France with the G7. But how does this affect people's fears and that elusive word called the store value when it comes to Bitcoin.
Right. So the thing that we've seen, and a really important thing to note, is that store of value safe haven assets have really seen a massive increase over this period. When we've seen people be afraid of what their money is doing, what their investment money is doing, they turn to safe haven assets as a potential. So there's an interesting article from Markets Insider where they've been talking about this growth, and they've said that in the period from May 2019 to August, we have seen gold trades increase by 73%. All right, seems impressive. What's more impressive? Bitcoin trades have surged 284% in that same period. Now, obviously, we're talking volume here. We're not talking rise in the value. As we've seen, has been some stagnation in the last few weeks on the actual price of Bitcoin. But in terms of volume being traded, massive growth, which indicates there's a lot of money flooding into the space, with people more concerned that sticking with regular markets could be dangerous for them.
No, and fascinating to see that, as you mentioned, it is volume, and at that span of time, that period of time between May and August, that's clearly also when that chatter, when the rhetoric of the trade war kept rising. Asher Westrup Evans, thank you so much for joining us today. As we said, we're going to be following this trade war, which keeps having its ups and downs, but one thing is for sure, the President of the United States has one country on his mind, and this is it.
China!
Let me ask you about China.
China. I go to China. 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 People from China, they love me. Right. China. 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 In China, they say I don't like China. I love China. People think I don't like China. I love China. China. China is the new China, by the way. China. 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 I deal with China. 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 Big league. China. So don't tell me about China. I know China. 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 Whether it's China, China. So if you went to China and you wanted to get a job in China, I don't knock China. How could I dislike China? A man from China. China. You have China.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.